Before we get started, drop a comment with your location and the exact time on your clock right now. There's something strangely comforting about knowing this story is being heard around the world at the same moment. Now picture this 3:30 in the afternoon sun, low enough to throw long shadows across the cul-de-sac, when Evan Mercer pulls into his driveway after another long patrol shift. He expects nothing more than a glass of iced tea and maybe 10 minutes of peace before his phone buzzes again. Instead, he finds Darlene Voss standing smack in the middle of his lawn clipboard, tucked under one arm, measuring tape dangling like a sheriff's pistol. She isn't smiling. She has the look of a woman about to rewrite history with a Sharpie. Darlene announces without hesitation that the HOA has reallocated half his yard to community property. The word reallocated lands with the same subtlety as a bowling ball in a fish tank. Evan notices the survey in her hand, too white, too crisp. Like she printed it in her basement that morning, probably while humming the national anthem of self-importance. Within 10 minutes, she's in the back of his squad car, screeching about presidential immunity, like she thinks the HOA Constitution ranks right up there with the U.S. one. Historians still argue whether HOA presidents genuinely believe their clipboards grant them sovereign power, or if it's just a suburban performance art piece. Either way, she looks like she expects the FBI to salute when she waves her measuring tape. But this isn't her first intrusion. Oh no. Evan remembers the early skirmishes. The neighborhood welcome sign mysteriously scooted a few feet onto his property for better visibility. The roses she planted on his yard's edge, supposedly for symmetry. And who could forget the emergency board meeting she convened because his wooden fence threatened communal harmony. Communal harmony, mind you, in a neighborhood where the loudest soundtrack is Mr. Johnson's riding mower coughing to life on Saturday mornings. 3 weeks earlier, she had knocked on his door at 7 in the morning, Evan's one blessed day off, with a blazer embroidered HOA president across the chest like she was running for Congress. She claimed to have found a mapping discrepancy from 1987 that made his backyard technically hers. Her proof photocopied maps with purple doodles, a seal that looked suspiciously like Microsoft paint clip art, and her own signature as president and witness. He told her politely to call a real surveyor. She muttered something about community spirit, then stormed off like a Shakespearean villain denied her monologue. 2 days later, Evan came home to find an HOA notice taped to his front door, complete with clip art of a gavel. It declared that effective immediately, 15 feet of his backyard was reclaimed for community use. He laughed at first, then realized she was trying to set a legal trap. Ignore it, and she could argue adverse possession. Fight as a regular homeowner, and she'd drown him in hearings. What Darlene didn't know was that Evan wasn't just a homeowner, he was a cop who documents everything. Every rosebush, every bogus map, every fake notice was neatly filed. And this time, he wasn't playing defense. Evan knew this wasn't just a one-off power trip. It was a pattern, and patterns are his specialty. He started quietly canvassing the neighborhood clipboard in hand, though unlike Darlene's, his actually came with state authority behind it. What he discovered made his blood boil. Turns out Darlene had been pulling the same stunt with nearly everyone on the block. The Johnsons, they tore down their garden shed because she claimed it violated some phantom HOA turf rule. The young couple on Maple Avenue, they actually shifted their entire driveway fence back 3 feet because she swore up and down it intruded on a community easement. Historians still argue whether communities truly need easements, or if the term was invented just to give bored neighbors something to fight about. Either way, Darlene was cashing in on the confusion. 7 different homeowners gave Evan written statements. Each story was a carbon copy. She'd show up, brandish fake documents, and talk about obscure bylaws like she'd memorized a secret constitution that no one else was allowed to read. One elderly man named Frank admitted he'd handed over part of his side yard for what she described as a walking path. Instead, she planted a vegetable garden, slapped a sign on it that read, HOA President Sustainability Project, and started selling tomatoes at the farmer's market. If hypocrisy were an Olympic sport, Darlene would have a gold medal in her own Wheaties box. Evan cross-checked the HOA's financial reports and spotted over $3,000 missing. Her so-called beautification projects were nothing more than a side hustle disguised in Latin legalese. The kicker. At the farmer's market, she claimed the produce profits went to neighborhood improvements. Evan snapped a photo of her booth complete with handwritten signs, support, HOA beautification, organic cucumbers, $2. He didn't know whether to laugh or arrest her on the spot. He chose patience. Paper trails make better handcuffs than steel, after all. The final straw came on a Tuesday afternoon. Evan, sipping coffee at the station, glanced at the alert from his security camera. The feed showed Darlene strolling through his side gate like she was arriving at her summer home. No hesitation, no shame, just straight to the corner of his yard with a shovel. She crouched and started tugging at the metal surveyor stake, muttering, as though arguing with invisible jurors. Evan hit the gas and was home in minutes, still in uniform. He stood in silence for a beat, watching her battle the immovable stake like Don Quixote fighting a windmill. When he cleared his throat, she turned dirt smeared on her knees and declared with terrifying confidence that she was correcting a surveying error on behalf of the HOA. Even asked if she had a court order. She chuckled like he'd just asked if grass required a license. According to her, the HOA president didn't need permission to maintain community standards. That was when Evan clicked on his body cam. Calmly, he informed her she was trespassing, attempting to destroy a legal boundary marker and committing a criminal offense. Her smirk faltered. For a flicker of a second, she seemed to realize the script wasn't going her way. But then she doubled down, giving him a lecture about executive authority and the HOA's supposed supremacy over individual property rights. Evan let her finish every word. Then he told her she was under arrest. The look on her face priceless. Somewhere between shock, outrage, and the expression a kid gets when you tell them Santa isn't real. He cuffed her gently, read her rights, and listened as she shouted about wrongful arrest, presidential immunity, and her husband being an important accountant. If accountants wielded the power, she believed TurboTax would be the next global superpower. The drive to the station was comedy night on wheels. Darlene sat in the back, rattling off a laundry list of violations Evan had supposedly committed, his lawn being half an inch too long, his cruiser parked on the street instead of the driveway, even the audacity of not hanging seasonally appropriate wreaths. Evan almost admired her creativity. Historians still argue whether HOA fines were ever meant as a tool for community order or simply as a suburban form of stand-up comedy. If so, Darlene was clearly trying for the headliner slot. At booking, her file grew thicker. A previous arrest surfaced 5 years earlier in another state for a nearly identical scheme. Back then, she'd been treasurer of a condo association caught embezzling funds and trying to claim common areas as her own. Probation community service, a slap on the wrist. Apparently, she took it as training for a bigger stage. The detective assigned to the case chuckled when Evan handed over the stack of forged maps, bylaws, and even the website Darlene had built for a fake law firm. She'd gone so far as to list herself as chief consultant for HOA territorial disputes. It was impressive. In the same way someone memorizing the entire script of a bad soap opera is impressive, you admire the effort while questioning the life choices. When confronted with evidence, she claimed everything was draft proposals misunderstood by small minds. When shown video of her tugging on the surveyor stake, she insisted the shovel was for snake safety. The prosecutor nearly sprained an eyebrow from raising it so high. He called the case the cleanest fraud package he'd seen in years, and filed charges that read like a grocery list: fraud, theft, trespassing, property destruction, impersonating legal authority. The HOA board, blindsided, convened an emergency meeting. The room was packed with neighbors, most clutching their own stories of Darlene's bullying. The vote to remove her was unanimous. Her husband, the important accountant, turned out to be a part-time bookkeeper at a furniture store. He knocked on Evan's door the next day, apologetic and pale, offering to pay damages and move out quietly. Evan sympathized but explained the case was no longer in neighborhood hands, it was criminal. News cameras swarmed. Headlines blared, local HOA president arrested for attempted land grab. The security footage of her arrest went viral, memed alongside captions like, "When your HOA fines you for breathing." A civil lawsuit followed, neighbors reclaiming land and damages. A forensic accountant uncovered nearly $12,000 siphoned during her reign of petty terror. The trial lasted 3 days. Darlene took the stand, still convinced she was a misunderstood visionary. She painted herself as a champion of property values. But the jury watched the shovel footage in silence, then laughed quietly at her Microsoft Paint official seal. They deliberated less than 2 hours. Guilty on every count. The judge, weary of her arrogance, handed down 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, restitution, and 50 grand in fines. Darlene's jaw dropped as she whispered to her lawyer that she had HOA immunity. The judge's gavel cracked down like thunder, the sound of her empire crumbling. And then came the quiet. Evan's yard remained his untouched, except for the stake shining proudly in the corner. Frank got his side yard back. The Johnsons rebuilt their shed, and the Maple Avenue couple reclaimed their fence line. Cedar Creek Meadows exhaled like a town finally released from a magician's cheap spell. Darlene was gone. Her roses wilted, her farmer's market booth dismantled. Now the wind down. The story drifts into stillness, each sentence uncoiling a little slower than the last. Imagine the evening air cooling over Cedar Creek Meadows, the kind of breeze that carries the smell of fresh-cut grass and the laughter of children on bicycles. The neighborhood has scars, yes, but they're healing in their own quiet way, the same way cracks in a sidewalk slowly soften with moss. Evan's brick ranch glows with the warm amber of porch light. He sits with a glass of iced tea at last, hearing nothing but crickets and the hum of his neighbor's sprinkler. Sometimes justice doesn't come as a grand fireworks show. Sometimes it's as simple as a stake staying in the ground where it belongs. The lawns stretch peacefully again, roses growing only where they should, and the town seems to sleep a little easier, knowing that no clipboard, no forged seal, no faux authority can trump the weight of truth. Close your eyes, let the images settle, and carry the calm into your own night. The chaos has faded, the noise dissolved. Just the soft comfort of a story ended, a lesson tucked away, and the steady rhythm of quiet breath guiding you towards sleep.